Good morning, my dear Prep 1 students. Hope you're all fine today. In today's lesson, we are going to complete Lesson 1 in Geometry, which is Geometric Concepts. So, let's go now and start our new lesson. We are going now to introduce relations formed between angles. In this video, we are going only to illustrate 3 of them. So, let's go and begin with the first relation between angles. The first one is the adjacent angle. What's an adjacent angle? And how can I say that 2 angles are adjacent? 2 angles are said to be adjacent if they have the following 3 conditions. And all of the 3 conditions must be fulfilled to say that those 2 angles are adjacent. The first condition is they have common side. The second one, they have common vertex. And the third one, the 2 other sides are on the opposite sides of the common side. Let's have a look here at this figure and illustrate the 3 conditions of adjacent angles. As you can see here, I have 2 angles formed. The first angle is angle DAC, and I have also angle DAB. Here are the 2 angles that are formed, or I have. Are those 2 angles adjacent angles? Let's go through the 3 conditions and see. If they are all found, then they are adjacent angles. We said that the first condition is that they have common side. As you can see here, AD ray is a common side for both angles. The second condition was that both of them have a common vertex. In this case, you will find that A is a common vertex. Even if you looked here, you will find that I said angle DAC and DAB. A is a common vertex for both angles, and AD is a common side. So, the first 2 conditions are fulfilled. Let's go for the third one. The 2 other sides are on the opposite sides of the common side. Let's have a look here. We said that any angle have 2 sides. So, if we looked at angle DAC, I will find that I have here one side, and I will have here the other side of the angle. What about angle DAB? Angle DAB have AD as a side and AB at another side. If you have the look, you will find that AC is on the right hand side of AD and AB is on the left hand side of AD. So the 2 other sides are on opposite sides of the common side. So this is the last condition and it's also fulfilled. Having the 3 conditions, so I can say that those 2 angles are adjacent angles. And this was the first relation between angles. Let's go now for the second relation. The second relation is the complementary angles. How can I say that 2 angles are complementary angles? 2 angles are said to be complementary if their sum is 90 degrees. Let's have a look here on the word complementary. To make it easy for you to memorize that complementary angles add up to 90 degrees, if I add here to the C a line, I will have here my 90 degrees. So, complementary angles are angles. If I add them, I will find them having the sum of 90 degrees. Let's have a look at those 2 groups. Here I have 40 degrees and 50 degrees. If I make 40 plus 50, I'm going to have an angle of 90 degrees. So, when I add 2 angles together and they give me a right angle or a 90 degrees, they are complementary angles. Let's have a look here. If I said, for example, that my vertex here is A, and I have here point B, and I have here point C. Have a look at AC ray and AB ray. What is the relation between those 2 lines? Those 2 lines, they are perpendicular. meaning that they form a 90 degrees. Let's go and have a look at the second example. I have here 30 degrees and 60 degrees. If I add 30 plus 60 degrees, I will have an answer of 90 degrees. 90 degrees, again, it's a right angle, and to say that two angles are complementary, they must sum up to 90 degrees. So yes, those two angles are complementary. Here are very important remarks. Why they are very important? Because simply, most of the time they will come as complete or choose. So, we must memorize them by heart. We said that to say that two angles are complementary, if I add them together, they must sum up to 90 degrees, right? So if one of them is a zero angle, the other one should be a right angle. Zero angle or 0 degree plus 90 degree, I will have the sum of 90 degree. So a zero angle complements a right angle. And if I have an acute angle should always complement another acute angle. If I have a right angle should complement a zero angle. Those remarks should be memorized by heart as they normally come in the complete and choose. Let's go now and see the last remark. If angle A complements angle B and measure of angle A is equal to measure of angle B. So I am saying that angle A plus angle B is equal to 90 degrees since they complement each other, right? Also, he told me that measure of angle A is equal to measure of angle B. So now I know that this 90 degrees is divided on two angles. How can I find the measure of one angle? Simply I can say that measure of angle A is equal to measure of angle B, and both of them are equal to 90 degrees divided by 2, because I'm going to divide the 90 degrees on two equal angles. So each angle is going to equal to 45 degrees. Sometimes he come in the complete and say to me that I have two equal complementary angles. What is the measure of each one of them? In this case, I know that the measure of each one of them is 45, since both of them are complementary and equal. Let's go now to the third and last relation that we are going to study in this lesson. They are supplementary angles. What are supplementary angles, and how can I say that two angles are supplementary? Two angles are said to be supplementary if their sum is 180 degrees. Have a look here at the word supplementary. This S can easily be changed to be 8. So, supplementary angles, if I add them together, I will get the sum of 180 degrees. Let's have a look on an example. Here are two angles. One of them is 125 and the other is 55. If I added them together, I am going to have a straight angle. And we know all that straight angle is equals to 180 degrees. 125 degrees plus 55 degrees is equals to 180 degrees. So can I say that those two angles are supplementary? Yes, sure. Those two angles, they are supplementary angles. Here are very important remarks. Why? Because again, they normally come in the complete and in choose. So I must memorize them by heart. A zero angle should always supplement a straight angle. Why? We said that two angles are said to be supplementary if they sum up to 180 degrees. If I have one of them zero angle, so the second one should be 180 degrees. So when I add them together, I will get 180 degrees. A zero angle supplements a straight angle. What about if I have an acute angle? We know that an acute angle measure is less than 90 degrees. In order to have an angle which supplements an acute angle, it should be an obtuse angle, so that if I add them together, I will get the 180 degrees. The right angle should supplement a right angle. Let's have a look here. As you can see, this is a 90 degrees, and this angle also is 90 degrees. If I add 90 degrees plus 90 degrees, I will have the sum of 180 degrees, which are supplementary angles. So, a right angle always supplements another right angle. Obtuse angle supplements an acute angle, and a straight angle supplements a zero angle. We must memorize those remarks by heart, as they come in the complete and choose. Let's go to the last remark. If angle A supplements angle B. So, he is saying that angle A plus angle B is equals to 180 degrees. And also he said that angle A is equal to angle B. So, the measure of angle A is equal to the measure of angle B. And I know that if I add them together, they must be 180 degrees. This means that I will divide the 180 degrees onto two equal angles. So simply, measure of angle A is equal to measure of angle B, and each one of them is equals to 180 degrees divided by 2. So each one of them is 90 degrees. So when he tells me that I have two supplementary angles and those two angles are equal, then the measure of each one of them is equals to 90 degrees. Let's go now to solve some examples in what you have just explained. I would like you please all to open your school book, page 87, write today's date, and let's begin with question number 1 complete. If measure of angle A equals 80 degrees, then the measure of the reflex of angle A is equal to... Yesterday we said that to find the measure of a reflex angle is equal to 360 degrees minus the measure of the given angle. So, in this question here, I'm going to make 360 degrees minus 80 degrees, and my answer is 280 degrees. Number B, the measure of the two equal complementary angles. I have two complementary angles, and not only two equal complementary angles, but they are equal. The measure of two equal complementary angles, each one of them is going to equal to 45 degrees. Why? Complementary angles are equal to 90 degrees, and I'm going to divide it into two equal parts, so each one of them is going to be 45 degrees. Number C, if angle A and angle B are supplementary, so now I know that angle A and angle B, if I added them together, they will sum up to have 180 degrees since they are supplementary. And measure of angle A is twice or 2 times measure of angle B. So he's saying that measure of angle A is 2 times measure of angle B. Then A is greater by 2. So I can say here that A is 2x and B is only 1x. Why? Since angle A is twice measure of angle B. Angle A is angle B plus angle B. So now I know that angle A, which is 2x, plus angle B, which is only 1x, if I add them together, I will have the measure of the two supplementary angles, which is 180 degrees. 2x plus x, I will have 3x equal to 180 degrees. This is now a normal equation. How can I solve it? Simply, I will say that x is equals to 180 degrees divided by 3. So, in this case, the measure of x is equals to 60 degrees. And I know that B is x, so B is equal to 60 degrees. Let's say it again. He told me that A and B, both of them are supplementary. and that measure of angle A equals 2 times measure of angle B. So if I have angle B, for example, having the variable x, so angle A will have the variable of 2x because it's twice B. I'm going to write it as an equation. I don't know the measure of angle A or the measure of angle B. So instead, I'm going to write 2x plus x equals to 180 degrees. And then solve it as a normal equation. So 2x plus x is equal to 3x. 3x now is equals to 180 degrees. 3x means 3 times x. So to find the value of x, I'm going to make 180 divided by 3. So x is equal to 60 degrees. Let's go now to question number 3. We are going to solve number B and C. What are the supplements of each of the following angles? We said that two angles are supplementary if when I add them together they have the sum of 180 degrees. What about if I have one of them? Can I find the other? Yes. Simply, if I know that in number A, one of the supplementary angles is 10 degrees. So to find the other, I'm going to make 180 minus 10. So this angle is going to be equal to 170 degrees. The angle which supplements 10 degrees is 170 degrees. Let's go for number B. Again, he wants to find what angles supplements the angle of 117 degrees. So, simply I'm going to make 180 degrees minus 117 and I will have an answer of 63 degrees. 63 degrees is the angle which supplements 117 degrees. I would like you now to pause and go and answer C and D by yourselves. And then come back to compare your answers. In number C, I have an angle 82 degrees. How can I find the angle which supplements this angle? Simply by doing 180 degrees minus 82 degrees, and I will have this angle equal to 98 degrees. So 98 degrees supplements 82 degrees. Number D, 92.5. So I'm going to make 180 minus 92.5 degrees and I will have an answer of 87.5 degrees. It's easy, right? Just knowing that a supplementary angle, if I add them together, they will give me 180 degrees and I will be able to solve for any supplementary angle. Let's go now for question number 3C. What are the complements of each of the following angles? He's giving me some angles and you want to find what angles complements the given ones. We know that complementary angles, if I add them together, I will have the sum of 90 degrees. So, if I have part of this 90 degrees, it's easy to find the other. Number A, 37 degrees. So I'm going to make 90 degrees, which is the sum of the complementary angles, minus the 37 degrees, and I will have here a result of 53 degrees. 53 degrees is the angle which complements the angle of 37 degrees. What about 48 degrees? Again, I know that complementary angles equals 90 degrees. I have one of them equals to 48. So what is the measure of the other one? 90 minus 48, I will have 42 degrees. So 42 degrees is the other angle which complements 48 degrees. Pause the video and do number C and D by yourselves and then come back. I know that the measure of two complementary angles are, if I add them together, are 90 degrees. So I know that one of them now is 45. 90 degrees minus 45. So the second angle is also 45 degrees. Those two angles are equal. And in number B, again, the sum of any two complementary angles equal 90 degrees. And I have one of them equals to 22.5. So 90 degrees minus 22.5 degrees, I will have this angle equals to 67.5 degrees. I would like you please to pause now and go and copy the answers of this question in your school book, page 87, and don't forget to write today's date. Let's go now for another question. We are going to complete this table. In the first column, I have the measure of the angle is equal to 40 degrees. He wants to know what measure of its complement angle and what of its supplement angle. So we know that a complement angle, if I add them together, they will give me the sum of 90 degrees. And the supplement angles, if I add them together, I will get a sum of 180 degrees. So, knowing that the measure of the angle is 40, what it complements? Simply, I'm going to make 90 minus 40, and my answer is 50 degrees. So, the angle which measures 40 degrees complements an angle with the measure of 50 degrees. And what is the measure of the angle which supplements the 40 degrees? We know that the sum of any two angles that are supplements must add up to 180 degrees. I have one of it which is 40. So, to have the supplement of this angle, I will make 180 degrees minus 40 degrees, and my answer is going to be 140 degrees. Pause the video and complete the second column by yourself and then come back to compare your answers. The measure of the angle equals 70 degrees. He wants me to find what angles it complement and what angle it supplement. So to find what angle it complements, I will make 90 minus 70. So I will have here an answer of 20 degrees. What about the angle which supplements? It's 180 degrees minus 70 degrees. So I will have here an angle of 110 degrees. In the third column, I was given the measure of its supplement, the supplement of the angle. And I want to find the measure of the main angle. How to find the measure of the main angle? Simply, to find the measure of the angle, I'm going to make 180 minus the supplement angle. So in this question here, I'm going to make 180 minus 100. So the measure of the main angle is 80 degrees. First, I must find the measure of the main angle and then find the measure of the complement angle. Knowing that an angle plus its complement is equal to 90 degrees, so to find the angle I'm going to make 90 minus 80, and this is equals to 10 degrees. Let's go to the other column. He gives me the measure of the complement angle, and he wants me to find the measure of the main angle and the angle which supplements the main angle. To find the measure of an angle given its complement, I'm going to make 90 minus the complement angle. So in this example, I'm going to make 90 minus 90 degrees, so I will have an angle of 0 degrees. What angle does this 0 degrees supplements? Simply, to find it, I'm going to make 180, which is the sum of the supplementary angles, minus 0. So, the angle which supplements the angle of 0 degrees is 180 degrees. I would like you please to pause your video and go and copy this question in your classwork copybook and then come back to complete. Let's now go and solve another question. It's a complete question, and you will find it in the sheet that I have distributed in the class. So let's go and begin. The angle whose measure is 30 complements an angle of measure what and supplements an angle of measure what? First of all, we know that two angles are complementary if I add them together and get the sum of 90 degrees. And two angles are said to be supplementary if their addition is equals to 180 degrees. In this question, he gave me the measure of an angle equal to 30 degrees. And he wants me to find what does this angle complement and what does this angle supplement. To find what this angle complements, simply I'm going to make 90 minus 30. So I'm going to have an answer which is equals to 60 degrees. So an angle of 30 degrees complements an angle of 60 degrees to give me at the end the sum of 90 degrees. What is the angle that supplements the angle of 30 degrees? We know that the sum of supplementary angles is 180. I have one of them, which is 30. So 180 minus 30, and I will have an answer of 150 degrees. This angle is the supplement of the 30 degrees. Question number 2. The obtuse angle is the angle whose measure is more than 90 degrees and less than 180 degrees. And this is the definition for an obtuse angle. Let's go now for number 3. Angle whose measure is 70 degrees complements an angle of measure what and supplements an angle of measure what. Again, two angles, they are complementary if I add them and have an answer of 90 degrees. And two angles are supplementary if I add them and have an answer of 180 degrees. Now I have one of them equal to 70. What is the other one? Simply, I'm going to make 90 minus 70. So the angle of 70 degrees complements an angle of 20 degrees. And if I know in the supplementary angle that one of them is 70 degrees, then what is the other? I'm going to make 180 degrees minus this 70 degrees. So my answer is 110 degrees. 110 degrees supplements the angle of 70 degrees. Number 4. If the measure of angle B is equals to 145 degrees, then the measure of the reflex of angle B equals. We said in the last lesson that to find the measure of a reflex angle, simply I go and make 360 degrees minus the given angle. So here I am going to make 360 degrees minus the given angle, which is 145 degrees, and my answer is that the reflex angle is equals to 215 degrees. Number 4. The acute angle is an angle whose measure is less than 90 degrees and more than 0 degrees. And this is the definition for the acute angle. I would like you now please to go and pause your video, copy those answers in the sheet and then come back to complete. Let's go now for number 6. If two adjacent angles are supplementary, when I have two adjacent angles and they are supplementary, meaning of supplementary that they have a sum of 180 degrees. So, to have two angles, and those two angles are adjacent and supplementary, their two terminal sides they must be on the same straight line. Two adjacent angles are supplementary, then their two terminal sides are on the same straight line. Number 7. If two adjacent angles are complementary, then their two terminal sides are. I have two adjacent angles which are complementary. Complementary mean that they form a 90 degrees. So here are the two adjacent angles. As you can see, the two terminals or the two sides must be perpendicular. So to have two adjacent angles which are complementary, their two terminals must be perpendicular. Let's go for number 8. Two angles are said to be complementary if the sum of their measures is. We said that complementary, to memorize what are the sum of its measure, simply just go and add here a line. And now I have the 90 degrees. So the complementary angles, their sum must to add to 90 degrees. In number 9, two angles are said to be supplementary if the sum of their measures is. Again, we said that to memorize it, simply let's look at the word supplementary. Supplementary, simply I can go and change the S to be 8. So supplementary angles add up to the sum of 180 degrees. Copy those questions on your sheet and then come back to complete. Number 10. The angle whose measure is what complements an angle of 30 degrees and supplements an angle of measure what? Again, let's go and remember that two angles are said to be complementary if they sum up to 90 degrees. So if I have one of them equal to 30 degrees, how can I find the other one? Simply I'm going to make 90 minus 30. So in this case, the measure of the main angle is 60 degrees. We know that if I have two angles and they sum up to 180 degrees, then they are supplementary. If I have one of them equals to 60 degrees, what is the measure of the other supplement angle? I'm going here to make 180 degrees minus 60 degrees, and I will have the measure of the supplement angle, which is equals to 120 degrees. Going to number 11, the angle whose measure is what complements an angle of measure what and supplements an angle of measure 150 degrees. So I have two angles and they are supplementary, meaning that they have the sum of 180 degrees. One of those supplements is 150 degrees. What is the measure of the other? It's so easy to find it. Easily do 180 minus the given angle, which is 150. And the measure of the supplement angle will be 30 degrees. So the angle whose measure is 30 degrees now complements an angle of measure what? Simply, I know that two angles are said to be complementary if they add up to 90 degrees. I have one of them equal to 30 degrees. What is the measure of the other complement angle? 90 degrees minus 30 degrees. So the other complement angle is equal to 60 degrees. Going down for number 12. If the outer side of two adjacent angles are on the same straight line, two adjacent angles, their outer sides are on the same straight line. On the same straight lines means that they are forming a 180 degrees. Then those two angles that if I add them together will give me 180 degrees are supplementary angles. Number 13. If the outer sides of two adjacent angles are perpendicular. Perpendicular means that they form a 90 degrees. What are the two angles that if I add them together I will get the measure of 90 degrees? They are the complementary angle. So, if the outer sides of two adjacent angles are perpendicular, in this case I am talking about a complementary angles. Copy the answers in the sheet and then come back to complete the last few questions. Number 14. If the sum of measures of two adjacent angles equals to 90 degrees, then their outer sides are, we said that to have two adjacent angles that sum up to 90 degrees, perpendicular lines. Why perpendicular lines? Because perpendicular lines have the angle of 90 degrees. Number 15. If the sum of the measure of two adjacent angles are equal to 180 degrees, meaning that I have a sum of 180 degrees, then those two lines are on the same straight line. So their outer sides are on the same straight line. Number 16. If angle A supplements angle B. So I know that angle A plus angle B is equals to 180 degrees. And angle A supplements angle C. So again, angle A plus angle C gives me also 180 degrees. Since angle A and angle A, both of them have the same measure, then sure, the other two angles, which is angle B and angle C, will also have the same measure and they are equal. Then measure of angle B is equal to measure of angle C. I would like you now to go and copy the last 3 questions in the sheet, and by now we have finished today's lesson prep 1. I would like to thank you all and have a nice day.